Hello and welcome to KRM Development and Infusionsoft Tag Best Practices. As we all know, Infusionsoft is an extremely powerful tool. It can also be a curse in your business. Usually the difference comes down to your ability to organize your naming conventions, right? It's not a very sexy topic. I know that's why not a lot of people like to talk about it very often, but it is hugely important. Do you have hundreds of tags and campaigns and custom fields, save searches, email templates, note templates, task templates, all these things with different names? You've got lists of names for everything. And if you can't keep them organized, then your system starts really becoming a nightmare. You get to a point where you're afraid to delete stuff. You're looking at things and you're like, I don't even know what that's for. And it's probably useless, but you're afraid to delete them because you don't know if they're attached to something else that's going to make something break, right? So I know that feeling, and that's what we're going to try to avoid here today by creating a system, a naming convention system to avoid those kind of problems and keep you super efficient when you're in the system. All right. We all love Infusionsoft, but none of us want to be in there working in it all day long. Trying to set stuff up and organize it, right? We want it to make us money and save us time. So today's agenda, what we're going to be talking about are the 3 uses of tags in Infusionsoft, right? If we don't know what the 3 different uses of tags are in Infusionsoft, then it's going to be really tough to figure out how to name the tags, when you're going through and trying to make them, and figuring out should I use a tag for this or should I use something else? Next, so use 1 is segmentation. Use 2 is dashboard reporting, and use 3 is campaign builder goals. All right, so we'll go through all 3 of those. And then finally, we're going to go through tags versus tag categories and what the differences are. Then we're going to go through the classic use of tags and the custom use of tags, or I guess classic naming convention of tags and custom naming convention of tags. And then I'm going to give you a couple of resources that you can peruse on your own. So, let's start with the first one, general segmentation. This is using tags for general segmentation is to divide your list into more specific areas, right? And there could be a bunch of them, right? You can read them along here. I've got one customer who, their basic business model is events. So they run events all the time, and they push people to become members of these, become members to come to the events. So you still have to pay to come to the event, but you pay if you're a non-member. So they're still making money that way, but they want to encourage their non-members to become members. So that's one way that they might segment it. I've got another customer who did a Kickstarter, right? Did very well, was able to raise his starting capital and all that kind of good stuff, right? So these are just different ways that you might want to segment your list. And a lot of these things are things that you're going to know before you even, bring it into Infusionsoft. There are things that, if you took your database and you had it in a spreadsheet, right, you can start thinking about, okay, I want to separate people in these different things, these different categories. Okay, next is going to be dashboard reporting. So on your dashboard, you've got different reports that you can use, save searches, save reports, and also the custom statistics, right? So you can count things and all that. And the way that you're going to use those most of the time is through searches. So what you do is you do a save search with tags, right? So you go into the search and you search for some tags, and then you do a save search, and then you use that save search either as a save report or the custom tags where you get the little counts, the numbers on your dashboard, which is amazingly useful. But that's another reason to use tags, right? So anything that you want to count, anything that you want to know how many times people do a certain thing or anything like that, those are all great uses for tags. And those are things that you can put on your dashboard. Again, it's very similar to segmenting, but in this case, it's specifically for reporting. Okay. Next, the campaign builder goals. All right. So using tags to achieve goals in Infusionsoft. And the way that I like to think about it is when you're in the campaign builder, right? You've got three basic things, right? You got traffic sources, which are the squares, and we all know that those don't actually do anything. They're really just there for your reference. They're good to use, whatever, but they don't do anything in the campaign. You can't configure them. You can't do anything with them. Next, you have goals, okay? And the campaign builder is a goal-centric system, okay? So it's goal-based marketing. And then you've got the sequences, okay? And sequences, as we know, right, those are things that you can put emails in, you can put tasks in, you can create opportunities in there, right? Lots of things that you can do in there. Assign ownership, make fulfillment lists, all these things inside of a sequence, okay? And so ultimately, the way I like to think about the campaign builder is that if I'm going to take the time to create a sequence, all right, there's a purpose for that sequence. There's a reason to have it, right? It's got to have a goal, right? So in that sequence, there's some call to action. And that's usually what I name the sequence is, I name it by the call to action. Whether it's like drive to purchase, drive to set an appointment, drive to whatever, right? There's a purpose for it. And so then the goal, right? The little circle, okay, that's what we're driving to, right? So that's the goal. So it's goal-based marketing. The sequence is designed to drive contacts to a goal. Once the goal is accomplished, then we want to stop the sequence, generally speaking. We want to stop the conversation, right? The sequence that was driving them to that goal. And now we're going to start a new sequence where we're going to try to achieve another goal. And so one way to achieve a goal in a campaign, one way to change the conversation is through tags, right? So that's the third use for tags in Infusionsoft, is to accomplish goals in a sequence, in the campaign builder. So one way that you might do that is, you've got let's say you've got an event and you don't have any integration to tell Infusionsoft that people actually attended the event. But you want to send one message out to people who attended the event and a different message out to people who didn't attend the event. So you've got some type of spreadsheet that you're going to upload into Infusionsoft, and what you're going to do is once that gets in there, you're going to apply a tag to all those people. And so when you apply that tag to all those people, that could be accomplishing the goal in Infusionsoft in that campaign. So it will pull them out of the one sequence that says, that is talking to people who didn't attend, and put them into another sequence of people who did attend. Okay. Now there's some other reasons to use tags in a goal in a campaign as well. Okay. So, and the only reason that you would ever do this is for a campaign, right? So here's an example. Let's say that you've got a sequence, right? You've got this new, you're going to launch a new product. Okay. And so you've got this sequence with a bunch of emails in it that are going to tell people about this new product. Well, one way to get people into the campaign and into that sequence is by applying a tag to them. So you pull up that list of people, you go to actions, you apply a tag, right? And you apply the tag that is in the campaign already, and that will pull all the people into the campaign and into that sequence. So now that sequence can now start telling them about the new product launch, okay? So that's another use that is Infusionsoft specific. That's another use of goals to get people into a campaign. And you can also use tags to pull people from one campaign into another campaign as well. So once they get to a certain point in the sequence, let's say like maybe they purchase something and now they go into a sequence that says that they purchased, you can apply a tag in the sequence that will achieve a goal in another campaign, and it will take them and it'll pull them into another campaign and start another campaign, right? So now effectively that person's in two campaigns. Okay. And there's one more use, but it's a little more advanced, so we'll kind of stop there as far as the campaign builder is concerned. So let's talk about tags and categories. Okay, so when we're talking about tags and categories, when I go into somebody's app and I see that they don't have any categories, they just have a bunch of tags, then, ultimately it's kind of like walking into somebody's house, right? And you open up their drawer, their top drawer, and they've got jeans and socks and underwear, and they got a dress in there, right? They got the kids' clothes in there, right? Like everything's in that one drawer, right? We don't obviously organize our life like that. And so the categories are like drawers, okay? There are different ways to like organize your stuff, okay? So now there's a custom way to do that, right? So I went to West Point, and there, when you go into like your drawer, like everything has got to be exactly the same as your neighbor, right? So everyone in the whole entire school, like, their top drawer has got to look exactly the same. You open up their closet, they got to look exactly the same, right? So that's the classic, which is why I tend to favor the custom, as you can imagine, right? So that's classic. And then the other one is custom, where you kind of, it's going to be a little bit different for everybody, and they're going to set it up in their own different way and all that kind of good stuff. So let's kind of go through the difference between the classic and the custom. All right. So classic naming conventions, right? Particularly, we're talking about tags. When you've got the classic, right, some of the pros of using classic are that it's designed to be foolproof, right? Like it's tough to mess that up. And which is good, especially when you're first getting started, and you're not really sure what the tags are going to be doing, and all these different kind of things, right? Because it takes a while to get like a little bit of a battle rhythm in Infusionsoft, and so it's really, really a good way to start if you don't want to spend a ton of time, thinking through your tagging and all this other kind of stuff. Just go with classic, and I'll give you some examples of how that is, what that looks like. And it's also a good way to get started if you've got many, 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 people who are going to be using Infusionsoft and creating tags and building stuff in there, right? If you all go with the same, just classic naming convention, then that's another good reason to use that as well, right? The cons is that, I think it kind of slows you down sometimes when you're looking for things, or you're trying to set things up, or create save searches with groups of people that are all kind of in the same thing, right? So, and I'll explain that as we go along. So then the custom, right? The pro of the custom is that it's designed for speed and efficiency, right? So it takes a little while to set up, but once you've got it set up, it goes a lot faster. In my opinion, it's some of the cons are that it is pretty easy to mess up, right? Like you can if you've got multiple people in there making stuff, you could set something up in such a way that like nobody will understand what it means 3 months from now, or 3 minutes from now, for that matter. And then also you may run into issues when you're doing integrations. So for example, if you're trying to create stuff in Zapier, it doesn't give you, like when you're saying, all right, I want to apply this tag to somebody when something happens in a different system, right? So for example, I've got somebody who uses an accounting system to do their like accounting stuff and all their invoicing. And so when we try to set the tags up, right, we say, so when this accounting function happens, we want this tag to happen in Infusionsoft. They don't have the categories. They only have the tags. And so you'll see on this next screen that could kind of mess you up a little bit. But there's ways to get around that, obviously, if you know that that's going to be something that you're going to use. But one thing that'll help you as far as when you've got multiple people creating tags and categories and all these other kind of things is when you create the category, right? If you go to CRM settings and then tag categories and you create the category name, it just helps to put a category description in there. So that way you know exactly what that category is for. And you'll note that like this one, I even put like a date in there that it's for the Power and Curse webinar, right? So here is an example of the classic versus custom. On the left, we've got classic. On the right, we've got custom. And so this is a person who has 3 different events that they run on a regular basis, right? Every month, they've got 3 different events. One is called the ASCC, one is called the VWTD, and they've got another one called DWTD. Right, this barbecue thing was just kind of happened to be in the middle of something else that they did once. Okay, so on the classic, you could see that we use the event as the we use the event as the category. Okay, so all the ASCC events or all the ASCC stuff is all categorized under events, right? Event, patient, 12, 13, 05, 06, right? So on and so forth. And then also in events, you've got the BW or the BWTD, and you've got this barbecue one that's kind of stuck in the middle there, right? So you'll see down at the bottom, right, we've also got campaign tags, right? So again, a campaign tag, the reason that you would use this, because we may not talk about this later, but the reason that you would use a campaign tag as a category in the classic is because there are certain things that, the only reason that you created that tag is to make the campaign do something, right? So in order to get somebody into a campaign, right, that's the reason to use a campaign tag as a category. It doesn't do anything other than get the people in the campaign. But you'll see that there's a bunch of ASCC tags under the campaign tags. And so, you could tell that you've got to scroll down past all the BWTDs and the barbecues and the DWTDs under events before you can get to the campaign tags. So if you want to pull a tag of somebody who went to the event and had, some other kind of things, right? You've got to go through a bunch of different categories to get there, right? Now let's go to the custom on the right. If we use the custom and they're all just ASCC tags, right? Now I've got, the patients that attended the event on 12, 13, 05, 06, right? They're all like kind of in the same spot, right? All the ASCC stuff is all in the same spot, whether they attended, they didn't attend, and they've got a bunch of other categories to go through there as well. But they're all in one spot, right? And the same thing for the BWTD, right? Like if I want to know if they attended, they didn't attend, they registered, whatever it is, right? Like I know that all the BWTD stuff is all right there in the same spot. And so that's kind of why I like that, is because if I'm trying to create like reports, I'm trying to do things, I don't have to scroll up and down, between millions of tags, because they're all going to be kind of in that same spot. So that is the major difference between classic and custom. Now, yes, I like custom over classic, but here is the big deal, right? Just stay consistent. I don't care which one you use, just stay consistent. Okay, that's the important thing, okay? So some more stuff about classic, right? When you get into classic categories, right, there are things like prospects, customers, behaviors, campaign tags, e-commerce descriptions, free item, whatever it is, right? And so these are the things that you'll, like when you go into Infusionsoft for the very first time, right? Prospect tags, customer tags, and I think there's another one, are already in there, right? Those are like the generic tags that are already set up for you in Infusionsoft, because they think that you want the classic, and that's kind of what it's going to go. And if you're starting off, like I said, that's probably going to be like the best kind of categorization that you want to use anyways, right? So, but when you go over to custom, right, you've got to kind of think through that a little bit, right? Depending on how your business model works and what your business is oriented around. So like I've got some people who they have 2 or 3 different products, right? And that's all they sell, right? Are just 2 or 3 major products. There's other people who have hundreds of products, and thus, using categories for those hundreds of products probably wouldn't be a good idea for them. Some people, their business is oriented around events. Others, they have, they have different campaigns, right? So if they've got tons of products, they've got different campaigns that are trying to drive people to do different things. So they can name those campaigns different things. And so thus they can use the name of the campaign as the category. But again, when you do that, I'm also a big fan of putting too much in a campaign as opposed to not enough. I don't like to push people from one campaign to another and all those kind of things. I mean, you can do that. There's nothing wrong with it. I just like to keep them as much as I can into one campaign. But again, these are just personal preferences. So that's another one. You can use tag. Other things you can do are like, major business processes or major customer segments or contact segments. I've got one customer who deals a lot with government people, right? So the DoD, the Department of Defense. They've got Department of Defense prospects, customers, right? Then they've got civilians, and then they actually even break it down even more than that. They've got different categories, right? but their business revolves around these different customer segments. So that's one way that they use to customize their tag categories. Okay, so so what would some of these things look like in the different ones, right? So a classic tag category, you can see, you've got prospect, DoD, product A, product B. All right, and this is how you would set it up if you had more than one category, right? Because there's only one category. And if you really need to segment your customers out even more, right, you can't have like a subcategory of a category. So you kind of have to turn your tags into like a category / tag. So in this top case, right, the category is prospect and the tag name is DoD dash product A. Okay, so note that I didn't put like another little arrow on there, because there's, I could use the little caret and make it like an arrow, prospect arrow, DoD arrow, product A. Okay, I really don't like doing that because it starts to get confusing, right? And here's the big deal, right? Is that if you are in the campaign builder and you're trying to create tags inside the campaign builder, it will not allow you to create a category. So I've seen a lot of people who will go in and they'll put in like a category like prospect, right, in the campaign builder, and then they'll put a little dash and an arrow, and then they'll put the name of the tag, right, and think that will just work. But that messes things up a lot when they go in and they're trying to find their tags, right? Because uncategorized tags get put into the list first. Like when you're going to do a search and you're looking for your tags, right? So you'll have something called like, events up at the top with a little arrow or whatever. And then you'll scroll down, right? And then you'll start seeing all the categories pop up with, in alphabetical order. And so that one will seem like it's way out of alphabetical order, right? Because it looks like it's a tag with a category, but it's not. Okay, so same thing with the custom tags, right? So if we're doing it around a customer segment like DoD, right? Then it would be DoD, it'd be the category, and the tag would be product A dash prospect. Okay, so if let's say that you were doing this in a different way, where the product was actually the main thing that you were going around, as opposed to the business segment type, right? DoD, right? In that case, you would just swap product and DoD, right? So product A, whatever it was called, and the DoD, the customer segment, right? You would just swap those, and then you can have everything organized by that, right? So again, it's just a matter of which one is bigger, which one is the higher level. And whichever one is the higher level, that's ultimately what you're going to want to have as your category. Okay, so final thoughts. Like I said before, whatever you do, stay consistent. If you're using classic, stay with classic. If you're using custom, stay with custom. But if you're using custom, make sure that you understand, and anyone else who's building in there, they understand what the major business model is, and how, and like what we're going to wrap this all around. Okay. So hopefully that helps out a little bit. And, obviously if you start off as classic, but, it's becoming a pain for you, you can definitely switch it over to custom, right? It's not super fun or exciting to do that, but you could do that. Okay. So, so that's what you have there. Now let's kind of go into labeling other stuff. So here are some quick examples of labeling other stuff. When you label save searches, I try to put the criteria that I used for the search right into the save search, right? If I've got multiple criteria for a search, a lot of times what I'll do is I'll create a tag for it, right? So I'll do all the multiple criteria, and then I'll put a tag on that, okay? And so that way I can just use that tag now when I do my save search. Okay, and there's other ways to kind of make sure that that multiple criteria always gets tagged. Again, that's kind of advanced stuff. We won't get into that. But ultimately, if I can't put it in a tag, then I'll go ahead and try to put as much of the names or of the criteria in the save search as I can, maybe abbreviate some things. But I try to do that, right? I don't try to say, oh, this is, people who went to the store yesterday, right? I put, the category dash and the tag name. So that way I know exactly what it is. And if I need to go back and find it or see if something happened or why something was wrong, right, it's easy to see the criteria. Okay. So that's what I like to do. I don't have to think about it. I don't have to second guess. And anybody who comes in behind me, right, it's going to be really easy for them to kind of figure out what's happening too. Let's see. When we're labeling, what's this? Oh, yeah, when we create tags as goals inside the campaign builder, right? Again, I like to make the name of the goal the same as the tag, right? So I don't put in here like start the campaign, right? But then up here, let's power and curse dash pickles, right? Like I don't like to do that. I want to make sure that they match exactly. Again, just helps keep things easy, helps things flow when you're going back in and trying to figure out what you did, or if you want to make a change like 6 months from now, right? It just keeps things super, super easy. All right. Also, we talked about labeling sequences as well, right? It's bad juju to leave the sequence as unnamed sequence or whatever a default comes out as, because if you ever need to just add somebody to the sequence, it's going to be hard to figure out which one of those it was. So I like to name the sequences based on the call to action in the sequence, right? So one is how to get ready for the event and reminders, right? If this is a event that somebody registered for, then underneath I've got, they didn't attend, so I want to drive them to the next event, or they did attend and now I'm going to drive them to an appointment, okay? So those are different. So I like to name them the course of action. And then also we'll go to that note template right there. So the note template, what I like to do there is when you name a note template, right, you definitely want to get in here and put the description. Whatever you put in here as a description, you want that to be down here as the name of the template as well, okay? So that way when you're actually in a contact record and you're getting ready to apply a note template, and you do apply it, and then you go back later and you want to see what happened, everything matches up, and it's very, very easy to see what you did, what happened, and all that kind of good stuff. Then also, because if you don't just apply the note template right away, you actually go to, you click the thing, you click add a note, and it pops up the note, and then you apply the template and you select it. It will also pull up the creation notes, okay? Because if you're like me and you kind of you forgot what that was going to do, right? You can pull that up. It'll pull up the creation notes. And in the creation notes, right, I actually like to put down what that note template's going to do. So in this case, it's going to start the drive to appointment sequence, okay? Now, I wouldn't leave it as that. I would actually write down all the things that are going to happen in that sequence, okay? So if there's tags or tags being removed or applied or all the stuff that's going on, is going to send an email, whatever it's going to do, I like to put that in there, right? Especially if you've got employees that are going to be using this stuff, right? Because then it just, again, it makes it foolproof. Nobody's afraid to use this stuff, okay? So let's go to emails and campaigns and all these things, right? I like to label these things in a way that I will remember what they meant 6 months from now, which sometimes might lead to long names, but that's okay. Don't be afraid of making campaigns with long names. Don't be afraid of making email templates with long names. That's okay. It's better to have a long name and remember what it's going to mean 6 months from now than to not do that. So that is kind of the deal. So hopefully that helps you guys out a little bit when it comes to naming conventions and making sure that you've got everything wired tight when you're going through there. Here also are some resources. Micah from MMM Mastery and Paul Sokol, who is he's disguised as a human. He's just really a brain. He's just a brain that walks around disguised as a human. But those guys are really, really smart. And here are a couple of resources that they have on the classic naming convention, right? They're big fans of the classic naming convention. These are some great resources that you can use to go and do that. But if you want to go use a custom naming convention, hopefully these tips and tricks help you out. All right. Have an awesome day, and we will talk to you guys later.